In 1994, engineers did something people had dreamed about for 200 years. They dug a tunnel under the sea between two countries. It opened on time-ish. It worked. And the trains have run ever since. And it was one of the worst investments of the entire century. So, how much did the Channel Tunnel really cost? Because the answer isn't the part you can see. Sost THED Sost, OFEVIR The Channel Tunnel is 50 kilometers of tunnel linking England and France, and almost 38 of those kilometers run under the seabed. To this day, it's the longest undersea tunnel stretch anywhere on Earth. It isn't one tunnel. It's 3 two-rail tunnels and a central service tunnel down the middle for maintenance, for air, and for getting people out. Down there, up to 5 meters below the waves, that middle tunnel matters more than almost anything else. It took 11 boring machines, around 13,000 workers, and 6 years. And here's the number everyone quotes. To build it cost about £4.65 billion. A huge number. Other for the people who paid for it, nowhere near the real one. Start with what that £4.65 billion actually bought. Most of it went into the ground. The single biggest cost was the boring itself, the machines, the crews, and removing roughly 4 million cubic meters of spoil from under the sea. Call it 40% of the build. Then the lining. Every meter of tunnel is wrapped in precast concrete segments. And under the channel, that lining isn't decoration. It is the only thing standing between the trains and the sea. About a fifth of the build cost is, quite literally, the wall holding the water out. Add the rails, the power lines, the signaling, another 15%. The terminals at each end, the shuttle wagons, the rest. Add it up and you land back at that famous figure, about £4.65 billion in 1985 money. But that build budget came with a promise attached, that it would never cost the taxpayer a penny. And keeping that promise is what turned an expensive tunnel into a financial disaster. Because the Channel Tunnel was built on one strict political condition: no public money. Every pound had to come from private investors. So it was financed by more than 200 banks and by hundreds of thousands of ordinary shareholders in Britain and especially in France, who bought in on the promise of steady dividends from the tunnel of the future. And then the project ran long and ran over, about 80% over its construction budget. But here's the trap. With no government to absorb the overrun, every month of delay meant another month of interest piling up on billions of borrowed pounds. Before a single fare had been collected, by the time the first train ran in 1994, the real cost wasn't £4.65 billion. With financing, it was closer to £9 or £10 billion. The tunnel hadn't earned a penny yet, and it was already drowning in debt. And this is the strangest part. The tunnel itself was a triumph. Trains ran. Passengers came. It did everything it was built to do. But the company that owned it, Eurotunnel, spent the next decade and more fighting its own balance sheet. Its debt peaking around £6 billion, and had to be restructured again and again. Each restructuring did the same brutal thing. It turned debt into shares, and in doing so, it shrank the original investors down to almost nothing. The people who funded the impossible tunnel, the banks, and all those small shareholders who believed in it, were left holding a tiny fraction of what they'd put in. So picture the contradiction. Out here, the trains glide under the sea exactly as promised. And on paper, The investment that made it possible had quietly collapsed. The tunnel worked perfectly. The investment didn't. But even if the books had balanced, there's a second bill the build cost never mentioned. Because an undersea tunnel is not a thing you build and walk away from. It's a thing you have to keep alive. The sea is always trying to get in. Every day, water seeps through the rock, and every day, pumps lift it back out. And they never stop. Switch them off, and the channel slowly, patiently, begins to win. Then there's the air. 50 kilometers of sealed tube needs to be ventilated, huge fans pushing fresh air through, and ready, in an emergency, to control smoke and keep the escape route clear. And the trains themselves are a problem. Every train dumps heat into the tunnel, so much that the whole tube would slowly cook itself. So there's a cooling system, pipes of chilled water running the entire length, just to carry the heat away. And after fires in the tunnel over the years, an enormous amount has been spent on fire suppression, detection, and that central service tunnel as a permanent escape route. None of this earns a penny. None of it moves a passenger. Pumps, fans, chillers, sensors, all of it runs 24 hours a day, whether a train is coming or not. This is the part of the bill nobody puts on a poster the cost. Every single hour of simply keeping the sea on the outside. The tunnel charges rent, and the rent is vigilance. And like any structure meant to last centuries, it wears. Track, power lines, signaling, the shuttle fleet. All of it has to be renewed, mostly in the few quiet overnight hours when the trains finally pause. Here's the part that makes the cost almost dizzying. The company's right to run the tunnel, and its duty to keep paying for all of this, has been extended all the way to the year 2086. The digging ended in 1994. The bill is contracted to keep arriving for another 60 years. So let's answer the real question. What did the Channel Tunnel cost? The build about £4.65 billion in 1985 money, with financing and delay nearer 9 or 10 billion by the time it opened. In today's money, somewhere around 12 to 15 billion pounds. And then add the part that has no end date. An estimated hundreds of millions of pounds every year just to pump, ventilate, cool, power and protect it. Enough that, simply by staying open, the tunnel can spend its entire build cost again roughly every couple of decades. That is the real cost of the Channel Tunnel. Not a number you pay once. A number you keep paying to hold back the sea until 2086. Here's the way to feel it. 38 kilometers of this tunnel sit under the seabed. Under up to 75 meters of water. Above it, the entire weight of the English Channel. Pressing down, every second, forever. You weren't paying to cross the water. You were paying to keep it out. And remember who paid. Not a government. Hundreds of thousands of ordinary people who believed in a tunnel and watched it succeed without them. The most successful tunnel in the world was one of the worst investments in the world. That's the thing about the Channel Tunnel. The miracle wasn't really the digging. The miracle is that every hour of every day, somewhere under the sea, pumps and fans and chillers are quietly running, so that a thing 200 years in the dreaming simply stays open. The bill that isn't on the receipt for the things you thought you already understood. Coast 80 alas, next time. The dam that has to hold back a sea of its own, and the fortune it costs to make sure it never, ever lets go. Subscribe. The hidden cost of everything.